been trying to write some questions and try to be a little bit more organized on my end, but as always, we'll see where the conversation goes, and if we stick to questions or not, totally good.
Okay.
I'm sure it'll be really beneficial. Um,
Perfect.
yeah, I'm gonna give a little preface on who you are, a little intro about you, and then kind of set up and frame the conversation, and then we
Okay.
can jump into the conversation. So
That sounds amazing. And
I'm gonna.
FYI, I
Mhm.
have dogs.
Okay,
I'm hoping that they don't make a fuss, but if they do, I apologize in advance.
no worries. I've had dogs before, or
Okay, good.
children,
Yeah,
people
exactly.
walking
Well,
by. It's all good. We
okay.
get
Well,
it.
no
I
kids, but lots of dogs.
okay. I have a toddler on my end. He's on the other side of
Oh,
the door and the wall.
how
So
sweet.
hopefully, but who
Yeah, yeah,
knows?
yeah. We'll do
You
what
never
we
know.
can. We'll get through it. We're pros.
All right. Yeah. All right. Well, here we go. Well, welcome to the Clean Plate Club. My name is Nick Flores, the host. Today I'm joined with a good friend, Leslie Nease. Leslie is the host of Honoring the Journey, a podcast where she has guests of all walks of life share their journey. Each week, she invites us to step onto someone else's path and see a world from their perspective, to honor the journey they have been on and learn new insight and a deeper understanding. Leslie had also written a book named Honoring the Journey, where she gives a deep dive on her deconstruction journey and hopes to challenge you on your own path. Along with those two things, Leslie is a life and faith transitions coach. And if you didn't know already, Leslie's claim to fame is a contestant on Survivor China Castaway. Well, Leslie, welcome to the show.
Thank
How are you
you.
doing?
Oh, I'm so good. I'm so excited to be here, Nick. Nick has been on my podcast, so it's kind of fun to now be on yours. You get to hear my story now.
Yeah, now you're in the hot seat. So good.
Yay, I love it.
All right, well, Leslie, as you had said, we already had a couple conversations before. I know we recorded twice for your podcast, Honoring the Journey, one of which released. I was in a weird spot. I wanted to get out of this deconstruction space with the podcast Collision, and now rebranded to the Clean Plate Club, and really focus on my efforts elsewhere.
Yeah.
So I started sharing my journey on Estranged Millennials, which is a podcast with my wife where we talk about estrangement. However, after the election and after we had talked, I had in my gut that I needed to keep going on in this space, as this space for the positionless player, for the person who doesn't know really where they are. They're in between things, right?
Mhm.
Or for today's evangelical who may be on the fence about what they believe or how they even got there, how they believe it. And I want to be a refuge for those who have completely deconstructed and in need of a safe spot to land. And through us rubbing shoulders on the internet, having talked already before, I couldn't help but believe that you two are also in the same spot.
100%. As a matter of fact, everything you said, I fully support and agree with. And when you told me you were stepping back, I completely understood. I think
Mm-hmm.
many of us in this space get a little bit burned out sometimes.
For
It can
sure.
be hard. There's a lot of negativity that comes with it from, our previous faith tradition.
Yeah.
But there's also, I just try to keep in mind that the people who are really looking for this content are invisible. I
Yeah.
call them the invisibles because they're online and they're looking for somebody who's going to say something
Mm-hmm.
that'll help them understand what's going on, either with them or with somebody they love. And,
Yeah.
I wanted to offer that kind of space with Honoring the Journey for everybody to share their story, because I think the reason we're so divided is because it's us versus them. And we don't
Mm-hmm.
even stop to listen. I remember being trained in evangelicalism.
Yeah.
Don't listen to what they're saying as much as you need to listen so you can respond. Have a scripture ready, always, the sword of the spirit, like it's an
Mm-hmm.
offensive weapon. You need to,
Yeah.
always come back with a scripture. And so it was very difficult to have a human, like genuine connection with other people because I was constantly just trying to prove them wrong and bring them
Yeah.
onto my side. Not because I'm an asshole, but
Mm-hmm.
because I literally care about them. And I was
Yeah.
afraid they would go to hell. And I think when you're motivated by fear, you tend to act out of desperation and sometimes you lose yourself. And so the last 8 or 9 years, I've just been trying to find, like, who are you? What, What do
Yeah.
you believe? Not what do you think you should, or what is everybody telling you should believe? And is it based in fear? Is it based in love? All of these things. It's just been such an incredible journey.
Mm. Yeah, I totally like we're on the same page there. There's no real soft space to land when you type in deconstruction on Instagram or TikTok or wherever.
Yeah.
It is very much a us versus them mentality. And so when I was like, oh, I'm gonna keep going with the podcast, how will it look? So I did Collision, a couple episodes of Collision, and then over the past like month or so, I was like, no, I want to rebrand and kind of reframe the conversation, because for me, Collision did feel like it is that us versus them, and I was like, I don't know if that's the right persona. I don't know if that's what I want to give off. And so the idea was, as parents, with those of us that have had kids, there's this idea where you give your child a plate full of food, and maybe there's peas and carrots on there, and they're just pushing them around. They're going to hide under the mashed potatoes. They don't it was just served to them. It was this belief. So very much for us, it's this belief, it's these traditions, it's this perspective of God that's handed down to us, and maybe it just doesn't sit right.
Mhm.
Might make our tummy hurt, make you feel sick. And so I want to really chew on these beliefs that were handed to us, maybe beliefs we told about ourselves or God or religion, and really kind of digest them and be like, do I really like that, or no, do I not like that? So we
Yeah.
end up with this clean plate, and now you can move on to a faith like ice cream, right? Something that you're really going to enjoy. It's not those
Ice
peas
cream
and
with
carrots handed down.
nutrients. Ice cream with
Yeah,
nutrients.
and no offense to the person that loves peas and carrots, but
Yeah.
that's just the metaphor here.
No,
Um,
no, I love it. And you're so right, Nick. I think that one of the hardest things for people in this position to learn to do is to listen to their intuition, because we've been told that it's evil and it's wicked, and and we did believe things we were told to believe even when they didn't feel right, because we thought we didn't it didn't matter what we thought. It only mattered
mm,
how we were told that the Bible meant this particular thing.
yeah.
And the consequences of unbelief were so drastic and so horrifying that I didn't think of it then. At the time, I thought I was, free, and I was embracing this beautiful gospel where Jesus came and rescued me. All of it was
Mm,
so real and amazing to me. But then I would hear things and I'd go, why would God tell us to love our enemies, but then send his to hell? Why,
mm,
I would ask these questions.
yeah,
I'm like, you're not allowed to ask that. Like, stop asking that.
yeah,
Just believe it
definitely.
because it's true. It doesn't make sense to you because you're not God. God
Mm,
understands. And so then you'd have to trust God. But like there was this suspicion of, wait a minute, he kind of seems maniacal at times, So
yeah.
even though it was what I was supposed to believe, there was always this inner voice going, this doesn't, this doesn't line up with what love is in my mind. And
Mm,
the thing I was always taught was it doesn't matter what you think. Your mind is lying to you. Your mind is being led by Satan if you're questioning at all. And so that in itself, like, I just want to say, if you're somebody who's listening to this podcast right now and you are going forward in deconstruction, you're like, you're probably suffering a lot. You're probably seeing a lot of destruction in your path as people are leaving you or
yeah.
abandoning you because of your beliefs. And I know that that is so hard, but you are so brave to do that. And as hard as it is initially, I promise it gets easier. It gets
Mm,
easier and it gets better. And the people that you're losing are not really as much of a loss as they are an alignment in your life. And when you finally realize that and you're like, I'm not mad at them, maybe they're mad at me, you can
mm,
just make peace with that. And making
yeah.
peace with all these little things is such an incredible journey. And I'm so glad I'm on it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you're alluding to a lot of the topics and where I want to go with this conversation. So
Yay.
before we jump even further, but I was thinking about when we set up this conversation, I was like, what do I want to talk to Leslie Nease about? And I've been rattling my mind, and I was just like, man, what could it be? So I want to talk about games, right? Quite honestly,
Perfect.
you were a contestant on Survivor, so I presume maybe you like games. We had a
Hmm.
little back and forth regarding latest season of Traders with Caroline and Danielle. What a
Yeah.
hot mess that was! But
Yeah.
shout out to Dylan for coming through in the end.
Yes.
So
Yes.
so happy that he won.
Yeah. Me
But
too.
I often reflect back on my own journey, and I look at the decisions I have made socially to
Mm.
appease others and try to be respectful. I couldn't help but notice in your book you had mentioned leaving the church to protect others from your own doubts and your deconstruction questions.
Yeah.
And that kind of just popped out to me. And knowing knowing you are very well at feeling others' questions, right? We were fielding the questions as I'm going to step away from this space so I don't get asked the questions about why am I doing this.
Hmm.
And you kind of put it in this terms where like that sounds like a game where they'll ask you a question, but you know very well what they mean by it. You know the
Yeah.
lingo. They're really
I know
asking
what
you
they're
about
doing. And
backsliding.
yeah.
Yeah, you know you're
Are
trying
you
to
in the
play nice,
word?
and yeah, exactly. And it's this social game at play, and no one's going to come out directly and ask you about backsliding. They'll say it in such a way where you know what they mean. So I want to break this down further. What's going on in your head in this moment? What is the
Mm.
fear and the hope that would come out of stepping away?
Well, I will say, um, I think the fear of it was a lot more paralyzing than the actual reality of it, if that makes sense.
Mm,
We tend to overplay our hand a little bit in our mind, especially people like me with a very creative sort of ADD sort of mind. I'm
mm,
always trying to be prepared for the worst. And so honestly, I think sometimes that benefits me. Sometimes it's a big hindrance because I spend a lot of time in anxiety that I don't need to be spending. But it is very helpful in some instances when you're like, oh, wait, that's not nearly as bad as I thought it would be.
mm,
And the reason is because when I left, I mean, honestly, when I left church, and I'm not even kidding, I didn't do it because I didn't want to be there.
mm,
I did it because I didn't, the questions I was having, I wasn't even sure what I was doing. I didn't know there was a thing called deconstruction. I just knew I had had it and I was tired and I
mm,
felt like everybody was in this trance and I had woken up from it. And I couldn't convince anybody that they were in the trance. And I didn't really want to because I didn't know what to say. I didn't have words. And I'm such a word person and I'm such a communicator that it had to have been the most difficult thing I've ever been through in my life. So I was like, I'm going to step away to protect them because
mm.
they're going to be scared for me. And I knew this. I knew they would be
Yeah.
afraid. And I knew that they would ask me questions that I couldn't answer. And it's just easier to disappear. And it's funny because when I left, nobody really noticed. They didn't
Mm.
notice. And I think that in itself was really painful. I was like, gosh, even my mentor didn't call me. This woman who I'd
Wow.
spent 20 years with, she didn't even call and say, what's going on with you? Nothing. Just absolute silence. And it's fine. I get it. It's a very uncomfortable thing. There's nothing that she could say that would bring me back to where I was. And I get, there's a lot of probably frustration, disappointment, fear, all of the things that I was always so afraid of making her feel. So that she didn't reach out to me. I'm sure she's like, well, why didn't you reach out to me? I'm sure she's like that. But honestly, I didn't want to upset her. I thought she would reach out and that didn't happen. And I was surprised. And then I realized nobody in my church really noticed that I wasn't there. Um, it was weird. It was just almost like everybody said, we need to give her space. But I know that's not what happened. I just think they get in their own little worlds. I think it's easy to show up for church and not notice who's there and who's not, and who's hurting and who's not. And but it gave me the space I needed. So I'm thankful for it, if that makes sense. It was hard, but I'm thankful. Um, and I think going through my mind was, if I'm going to find the answers that I need to find, I probably have to start looking in places that I was told not to look. Listening to people like Rob Bell, who I was told was a heretic, Jen Hatmaker, who was on the fringes and a heretic. All of the people that I was told were heretics were the people's books that I bought first. And mostly because I thought, it's not that I want to believe everything different. I just want to hear a different perspective. I had never done that before, Nick. I was taught not to. I was taught to just be preparing an answer in my mind the whole time somebody was sharing their story. You need to be ready with an answer for the hope that you have, and it was so much pressure. So I was like, I'm just going to listen to what they have to say. And if I'm honest, as I was reading a lot of their work, and oh my goodness, Rachel Held Evans, her book, Faith Unraveled, rocked my world because it was just filled with so much love and so much like, listen, I'm not trying to, come up against I'm just saying like, this doesn't make sense to my heart. And for the first time I realized, wow, I think I've just been stuffing my feelings down because they scared me. And I was in my quiet time one morning and I was reading in First John. I still was in this ritual because, I hadn't let go of everything. I was just little by little letting go. And I read that verse about there is no fear in perfect love because perfect love casts out fear, and fear has to do with punishment. And I was like, what have I been experiencing? Because it's not perfect love. And if God is love, we know that God would be perfect love. If I want to experience God, I can't be motivated by fear. And everything was fear-based. If you don't, you will go to hell. If you don't do this, Jesus won't save you. You are separated from God. If you want to be connected with God, you need to do this, this, and this. If all of this was so transactional, which it felt like capitalism. I don't know. It just felt weird. I was like, this doesn't feel like love. This feels like a business arrangement. And so I said, I don't know where this is going to lead, God. And I prayed the whole time. Like, people don't understand. I was begging God not to let me do something wrong or go in a wrong direction. And I just said, I'm going to lean into love and see where it takes me. And as I leaned more into love, I realized the evangelical message of separation and hell and all of that did not make sense to me anymore. And, I've talked to some people who were in evangelicalism and they have said, well, of course you don't believe it anymore. You're not in the Bible. You're not in fellowship with other believers. You're not. And it's like, yeah, but like, do you not like, I've done research on like mind control and trying to get people to think. And those are tactics that they use. They don't let you hear other perspectives. They don't allow you to find your voice. They want you to stay, quote, in fellowship, which means around the people that believe like you. They want you to be in the word because the word is being translated the way that they say. And if you're reading it and in the way that they're translating it, you're not going to go anywhere because you're going to be deathly afraid. And so I was like, whoa. And I think a big thing for me was moving from the Bible Belt to Utah. I was a, Christian radio host. I was a speaker and a writer. I found myself sort of like saying no to events when people wanted me to speak. I ended up leaving my Christian radio job just because it felt like a duality, like that wasn't real for me. And when I moved here, I was surrounded by what I was told was a cult, the Mormon church. They're everywhere here. LDS is what they like to be called. So I'll try to be respectful and say that. But the LDS faith here is very, very strong. And it's just like being in the Bible Belt, but with a different gospel. You know what I mean? It's crazy. They consider themselves Christians. They would consider people in evangelicalism not, like you don't believe the true gospel because we do. And, and as I was getting to know them, I'm like, they're praying to God. God is answering their prayers. They're doing the same things that we did. The answers that they had to questions they didn't understand were the exact same that we had. Like, oh, well, God's ways are higher than our ways. We won't understand this side of heaven because we're not God. I was like, wait a minute. If they're in a cult, am I in a cult? Like, it really was like this mirror being held up to me. Like, Leslie, think about this. And then I started realizing how big the world is. I just went to Utah. I mean, if you go to Japan, you're going to see the Shinto religion. If you go to India, it's going to be Hindu. If you go to, China, there's lots of Buddhism. Like, it doesn't matter where you go, there's going to be other religions, and they believe they're the one true way. And it just blew my mind, because in that moment, I realized religion is so outward. Religion is community. Religion is people who speak your language. But faith is so personal. And the way that I expressed my faith was through my religion with the people that believed like me. And the minute I started believing something different, I experienced being voted out again. And it was very difficult, probably more difficult than being voted out as Survivor. On Survivor, I got voted out and I was like, oh, thank God, I can take a shower. I can eat a meal. This one was tough. This was my people. I still consider them my people, but, many of them would say I was never one of them. I was never a true Christian because I didn't believe the way that they did. And, I love the way people just assume to know, you know, my heart. I don't even know my heart. Like, only God knows my heart. But I can tell you, I changed when I decided to stop being afraid and I started leaning into love. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. They have the Book of Mormon. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. That was up. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Because that's usually what Christians do. It is. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, I looked at the things that brought me peace that I felt were already leaning into love. And I was like, okay, these things are not negotiable. Jesus was part of that. Now, the way that I see Jesus is very different now. But his message, just as powerful, more powerful, because, it includes everyone, not just those who say a magic prayer. And that's so hard for evangelicals to hear. And I hate that. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but honestly, why is Adam powerful enough to send everyone to hell with his choice? But Jesus isn't powerful enough to bring everyone to heaven with his. Like, to me, it's like, oh, you don't have to say, yes, Adam, I agree to be, you know what I mean? Like, it just happens. We're just sinners, right? So then why is Jesus's, method not as powerful as that? Like, why do we have to make a conscious choice? That, to me, that doesn't make sense, because some people just don't know. Some people, like, why would the gospel, like, I just started looking at each thing that brought me anxiety. And I would say, what about it makes me afraid? What about this teaching feels like love? And I just it was like a sifter, I threw everything in the sifter and I just let the things fall that didn't feel like love or that felt like control or fear. And I really had to take some steps of separating myself from, I had to give myself permission, you know, because I was known as Sister Christian. And that's what, like, the subtitle of my book is The Deconstruction of Sister Christian, because I want people to understand I had a voice when I was in evangelicalism, but it was saying something very different than what my voice is saying now. And I felt like I needed to let people know this is who I am now and this is why. So that's what my book is about. It's my journey. It's like a memoir of my deconstruction and why it happened and what it looked like. And it's changed even since the book was written. Like, we just keep evolving. And I was talking to Plum yesterday. She's going to be on my show, and she was saying, when you think about it, when you look at each thing, oh God, I forgot my thought. I'm sorry. I forget what I was going to say. I was so excited. Anyway, yeah. So I would just take each thought that would come to me that felt like it had anxiety. And I would say, what about this is, and I just had to get real with myself. And even if if something went against what I was told the Bible said, then I would research it. I would research, like, what does that look like? And why do we interpret it this way? Where did that word come from? And like the whole thing about homosexuality, that journey was intense, because I think that's the first question. Coming back from Survivor, I started saying, why do we tell homosexuals they're going to, I don't understand. Like, why do we tell them they're going to hell if they choose to be a homosexual instead of choosing God? Like, to me, that just seemed really weird. Well, it's an abomination, So I look up abomination, and abomination means a lot of things, like mixing fabrics. So like a cotton poly blend is an abomination. It's like all these different things. And I'm like, wait, why do we just single this one out? And was it really a homosexual that was mentioned in the Old Testament? Because that wasn't even a word yet. It was like 18 something when it became a word in Germany. It was put into the Bible in 1946. And before that, it meant something else. What did it mean? And it was somebody like a male prostitute. It was somebody who would, abduct children, or not abduct, but, hurt children sexually, or young men who, didn't choose to go with that. It wasn't a consensual, healthy, loving relationship. It was very violating, and it was wrong. And that is wrong. And I see the point in that, because it causes harm. And so I don't know. I think just taking each thought, I did what Jesus told me to. I took each thought captive. And I just said, I'm just going to look at it, and I'm going to think for myself for once. And, a lot of people say that's dangerous. You shouldn't do it. Then don't do it for yourself. But it worked for me, and I'm free now. I don't have fear the way I had fear. I don't have shame. I don't have guilt. I have the ability to connect with other human beings on such a deep level now because I'm listening. And I think that's another thing is I shut my mouth. I, you know, all I did as a Christian was talk. I wrote books and Bible studies and was a speaker. I was on the radio and I was telling people what to believe because I was being told what to tell them. Make sure they know this because otherwise they're going to hell. And I never listened to listen. I listened to respond, but I didn't listen to listen. And so I think that's why for like 3 or 4 years, I didn't talk about what I was going through. I just listened. And I think that's why I do what I do now. I think it's why I have this podcast because I want, one of my target markets is in my heart, and I hate to even say target market. So the people that I'm trying to reach, let's just say it that way, because that sounds more like my heart. But I am a businesswoman and you have to think this way. But honestly, yes, I'm there for the invisibles. I'm there for the people who are deconstructing, who don't want to talk about it, but they need to listen. They're listening. But I'm also there for anyone who is still an evangelical who's willing to listen, because the only thing they're hearing about deconstruction is what their fear-mongering pastors are telling them. It's wrong. It's from Satan. It's evil. All of this stuff. I'm like, stop listening to people like that. If you really want to learn what deconstruction is about, you have to listen to somebody who's actually experiencing it. And this is something that I've known for a long time as a speaker. Like, it's hard for you to share a message that you don't have authority to speak in. And the only way you earn authority to speak into something is when you experience it and you've been through it. And you are now either on the other side or so far in that you feel confident in speaking your truth. Otherwise, you know what? Let those people handle it. And I'm there for those. And I know there's maybe 2. You know what I mean? I know not a lot of evangelicals listen to me. They've already written me off and, but I'm there if they ever wake up one day and go, maybe I should start listening. Ugh, hate it. Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. But it's true. Yeah. And there have been people on my podcast. I'm like, whew, that's out there, but it's their journey and I'm honoring it by letting them share it. And I'm like, and you know what? Even the most ridiculous seeming when you first hear it, journeys, there are things you can take from it and go, that was beautiful. That I get. That resonates with me. And I have learned and I have grown so much. I just posted my 60th podcast. And, so I'm kind of still new at this. It's only been like a year and a half, but I cannot believe how much I've grown just from listening to the perspectives of other people. I've had Muslims, I've had Jehovah's Witness, I've had Mormons, I've had, evangelicals and ex-evangelicals. I've had progressive pastors and artists and reality show contestants. Anybody who wants to share their journey, most have deconstructed, some of them haven't. Some of them are fully in their religion, and I just want to hear it. Like, help me understand why you believe what you believe, because I think that we make these monsters into people who believe different than us. And literally, they were born into that culture. They were born into that family, into that community. They are going to believe what their people have told them to believe. That is what is true to them. And who am I to go in and go, you're wrong? And I think that's where we miss the mark with missions. So we go into these countries, we're like, oh, we're going to make you believe just like we do. Why don't you just go in there and love them? Why don't you just go in there and serve them? Why do they have to change the way they are to be loved by you, to be served by you? It's to me, it's just so obvious now, but when you're in it, there's an answer for everything. So, and maybe it's because I'm not in the word the way I used to be, or in fellowship or whatever, but I'm telling you, I've never felt more confident with my belief system than I do now, because now it makes room for other people to believe something different. And to me, that feels right. Hmm. And learn from it. Hmm. Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. We're not. Mm. Right. Or lived in the Bible Belt and believed exactly the way, I mean, I remember being in a fundamental Baptist church in California and being told never visit the Nazarene church because they are being led by Satan. Like even within the Christian community, they're judging each other and saying they don't believe right. They don't believe right. And I had a guy. I'm telling you, some of my guests have rocked my world, and one of them specifically kind of stands out. His name is Reza Aslan. He wrote the book Jesus of Nazareth, or Zealot Jesus of Nazareth, the Life and Times, or the Historical Jesus, or something like that. Anyway, he came on, and he is a religious sociologist. Which, if I could go back to school, that's what I would do. It's so cool. Like studying, why do people believe what they believe? How is it so easy? I remember when I moved here, looking around, if we'd be in a restaurant, I'm like, I wonder who's a Mormon. Who can believe that crazy stuff? You know what I mean? Like, how are they so normal looking when they believe this weird stuff? And then I was like, wait, Leslie, you believe weird stuff. We all believe weird stuff. But he said, that he really made it very clear that religion is that language that we speak. Our faith is very personal and it's internal. And the way that we express it is through words. And when people speak the same words and believe the same way, those are our people. That's our religion, right? He said, but we're all, and he quoted the Buddha, and I'm going to probably butcher it, but something to the effect of, imagine that each religion is building a well. They're all building wells. So you've got this, a world with all these different wells, and they're digging and they're together and they're unified and they believe this way, but they're all hitting the same water. They're all hitting the same water. So why is this religion over here saying that this one's wrong? Just because they call God something else or a different name doesn't mean it's not God. That is their language. It is not, it's so semantic. They make it so dogmatic and like it's annoying. Like think how big God is, and then times that times infinity. And that's how big God is. And when we say he can only be the water of this well, we are making God very small, and we are making ourselves very small. And we're also making ourselves, I mean, it's kind of like a narcissistic, like, I am right, you are wrong. Nothing you can say will change my mind. And tell me, how hard is it to connect with someone like that? I can't. I mean, I try, I can't. And I don't care what religion you are. I'm not just talking about evangelicals. If you're in a religion that's telling you that everybody else is wrong, what is that doing for you? How is that making you feel about other people, other belief systems, other cultures, other countries? Is it builds that racism. It builds that anger that don't come near me because you're wrong. And to me, that is what's killing our country right now. We not only want our religion to be the only religion, but now we're wanting our country to be this way. And I say we're loosely because I'm not one of them, but I live among them and I am an American. And it, people, if you go travel somewhere right now, people automatically, oh, you're an American. Okay. Like we are kind of like being looked at as kind of assholes, like if you're honest. And it's because of that. It's because of that mentality. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's ever going to go away. I think I can be a Pollyanna sometimes and hoping that it will, but it won't. It's always been this way, Nick. There's nothing new under the sun ever. These are systems and cycles that we go through as human beings. But sometimes in that cycles, you wake up and you're like, I think I'm going to swim against the stream. And it's hard, but then you find there are other people doing it too. And I think the more of us that start swimming against that stream, maybe we can turn the tide. That is the hope. No fear, man. Let's go. We got to be strong, though. We got to fight that current. Yeah. Yeah. It does. It's so simple, but we don't know how to do it. If you listen to somebody and they say something that feels contrary to your truth, it feels like they're attacking you. And they're not. Like that's in your mind. They're not attacking you. They're challenging something that you have made a truth that may or may not be the truth. And it's important that we have the humility to say, I'm going to listen because if something resonates, and things have resonated, Nick, things have resonated as I've opened my mind and my heart and my ears and I've started listening. It's beautiful. Yeah. 100%. And I know that that's weird to people to hear, they're like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And I had a guy on on TikTok the other day. He was like, so you're saying, cause I posted something where I said, I jumped out of religion to follow Jesus. And he's like, well, but Jesus, the only thing you know about Jesus is from the book that's from religion. So, and I was like, listen, true or not, okay, let's all agree that his life, whether true or not, was pretty freaking unbelievable and lovely. And he leaned into love and he knew he was connected to God. And he made it very clear that you didn't need religion to believe that. And I think that's why they killed him. I remember believing, oh, he died on the cross to save me from my sins. And I believe now he died on the cross because of our sin. And the sin was protecting our systems and our institutions over protecting human life. He gave a message that said, you don't need that. All you need is to know that the kingdom of God is in you and it's among you. It's not in church. It's not in a tabernacle. It's not in a sanctuary. You know what I mean? Like the kingdom of God it's love. He said, you are in me, I am in you, and I am in God. He was trying to tell us that we are one. And then we made him into another religion, actually several hundred of them. So is he real? Did he live? Did he raise from the none of that really matters to me. I'm going to follow the way he lived his life because it makes sense to me. Sorry about the dogs. There's probably a delivery person. Yeah. Sorry. I'll mute it for a second. Yeah. That's why he always said, "You've heard it said this, but I tell you this." Like, he who has ears to hear, he who has eyes to see, go read the Bible through a lens of love. Go read the Bible believing that maybe the message of Jesus wasn't, I'm going to go die for your sins, but you are already connected to God. You are already one with God and with me. Like, we are one. And you're one with that person over there and that person over there. And he came up against systems that were literally in control. And that's why they wanted him dead. And that, think about it. Think about it right now. Like, even the systems right now in our country aligning, it's political and religious. Here we go again. So anytime you stand up and say, you don't need that, what we need to understand is that we are one. We are, everybody on this planet has divinity within them. And when you finally see that, and I think a lot of people, I don't know, Nick, I need to know your thoughts on this because I really respect you. What are your thoughts on people waking up right now? Like, I feel like there is such a powerful spiritual awakening, not just with evangelicals, but all religions. A lot of people are starting to go, not sure about this. Yeah, but it is fun to think about. Yeah. Yeah. That's why. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Mhm. 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 Oh, totally. Yeah. No, it's a great analogy. I mean, like, I don't like onions. So I would say that anything that is fear based is an onion to me. So I'm not going to use it in my recipe. Right. If you like onions, eat onions, for crying out loud. But nope, not for me. Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah. Mhm. That's so dangerous. It's so dangerous. Yeah. I mean, literally. Yeah, we do. And the more of us who do that, the more of a current that we will take in the other direction. And it's hard. It's really hard to do this. So me saying this, like I'm fully aware of the cost, Um, but I also am fully aware of what will happen if I don't do this. And there's a lot of people asleep. And, sometimes when you turn a light on when they've been sleeping a while, they get mad. They throw the covers over their head. They cuss you out. It's like, turn the light off. But leave it on. Just leave it on. Keep being a light because eventually their eyes might adjust and then they can join us in this stream and swim up with us and open their hearts a little bit. We get, I don't know. I think we only get one life. I don't know anymore. Now I'm like, who knows what's real? But this particular season, we are alive for a reason. And we are going to waste it if we stay in our own little corner of the world with our own little people that believe the exact same way. Trying to pull people in instead of allowing myself to go beyond those borders and meet people where they are. I don't want to waste a single moment. I owe this to myself. I owe this to whoever, whether it was me, a God, I don't know. Somebody said it's your time to live on this planet. So when I get up there, I don't want to be like, oh gosh, I blew it. I would say I did everything I could to show love and to grow in love and to increase my knowledge of who people are and understand their hearts. I just want to do it all, Nick. I want to wring out that rag until there's nothing left in it. And I was not able to do this when I was stuck in just a dogmatic, scared box with a steeple on it. Yeah. Well, I loved it. It was fun. I love this stuff. I could talk about it all day, that, because it's just so fascinating. And the more we talk about it, the more we bring it out there. I think of sometimes when I was in evangelicalism, I think of myself as like this rock that needed to be broken before I could understand. And I had to be thrown down several times before it finally like shattered. And I went, I had my aha moment, but it took several, so maybe the more we speak out and the more that we share what we're seeing and feeling and believing and sensing, maybe the more shattering will happen and people will start to wake up a little more. So thank you for what you're doing. I'm glad you're back, Nick. I didn't get to finish that thought earlier, but like I understood why you wanted to walk away. But do you remember what I said to you? I was like, Nick, you are so good at this. You're like, you're so talented. I remember looking at your artwork and the way that you promote and everything that you're doing. And I was like, I wish I had someone like that. Like, I'm just like, that's not my gift, right? I have other gifts. But I was like, Nick, like, but I get it. I didn't want to tell you, don't quit, but I'm really glad you're back and you found the right recipe for yourself. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. It's too important what you're doing. Yeah. 100%. Yeah, we're not competitors. We're in this together. We're voices. And certain people will listen to you and certain people will listen to me. And it's just the more content out there, sharing what real deconstruction is and not, what the fear mongering police or, I call them God's Gestapos, what they're trying to do. I think the better off we'll be. And maybe some people start to understand this is why people are doing it, because they're trying to follow Jesus, not leave him. Thank you. Yes. Thank you, sir. It was really fun. Yeah, let me know. And if there's anything I can do to help promote it or whatever. Okay. Thanks, friend. We'll see you soon. Bye.